Hello everyone and welcome to National 5 Biology. It's Miss Anderson here. I hope you're all safe and doing well. We've been looking at the best way to teach the National 5 Biology course and have decided to use the following structure. Each week we're going to put a narrated PowerPoint presentation along with revision materials onto Teams, and we want you to access these as best you can to help you learn the course at home. As well as this, you have revision questions to complete, and at the end of the week we will put up a quiz via the assignment section of Teams for you to complete and then submit. One of the biology teachers will be on hand to answer any questions that you may have via Teams during the week. Most of you have worked through the majority of the multicellular organisms unit. We're now going to move on to the second last area of the unit, called plant transport. There are 3 learning intentions this week. The first is to learn about the functions and structures of the xylem and phloem, which are components of the plant stem. The second is to explain the process of transpiration. And the third is to learn about the 3 stages and processes that occur in transpiration itself. Plants need to transport many molecules throughout their structure. The 3 main molecules that are transported in plants are water and minerals, and sugar, which we also know can be referred to as glucose. Plants themselves use 2 main structures to transport these molecules. The first is called the xylem, and the second is called the phloem. We're going to look at both of these structures in a wee bit more detail. For both vessels, we need to know their structure and their function. The xylem is the first one we're going to look at. It is found in the stem of the plant, and its main function is to transport water and minerals up the plant, and that comes from the roots themselves. The xylem is actually composed of dead cells. It's not a living structure. It is what we call lignified, which means it's got rings of lignin. These rings of lignin are almost like cartilage that you'd find in your nose. It's got a structure to it that allows the xylem to be held open and to withstand pressure changes as the water moves up the plant. So if there's a lot of high pressure, the rings of lignin will allow the plant to keep its structure. Okay, so I'm going to give you 5 seconds. Can you name the structure in the xylem labelled X? Okay, so well done if you got this correct. X is called the rings of lignin. Moving on to the phloem vessel. This is also found in the stem of the plant. The phloem's main function is to transport sugar, and it transports this sugar both up and down the plant. Unlike the xylem, the cells in the phloem are living, not dead. The phloem has 3 main structures. The first is the sieve tube and sieve plate. These are really quite easy to identify in a diagram, as the sieve tube looks like a tube and the sieve plate looks like a plate with holes in it. So kind of like a kitchen sieve. The final structure in the phloem is called a companion cell. These structures sit alongside the sieve tubes and they give them energy to transport the sugar. However, you don't really need to know this. As long as you can label the diagram, that is all we really need at National 5. Okay, so there are 3 parts to this. I'm going to give you 10 seconds. Can you name the structures in the phloem labelled X, Y and Z? Okay, so well done if you got this correct. X is called the sieve plate, Y is called the sieve tube, and Z is the companion cells. Now, we know about the structure and function of the xylem and phloem. Here is a table to summarise. So the characteristics of the tube: the xylem is dead while the phloem is alive. The xylem transports water and minerals, whereas the phloem transports sugar. The xylem transports water and minerals up the plant, whereas the phloem does both. It transports sugar up and down the plant. The xylem is lignified, so it's got those rings of lignin, whereas the phloem does not. The xylem does not have sieve tubes or sieve plates, whereas the phloem does. And the xylem has not got companion cells, but the phloem has got these wee buddy cells, these companion cells, so that's a yes. Okay. Now we're going to look at the learning intentions again, because we've went through number 1 to learn about the functions and structures of the xylem and phloem. We're now going to explain the process of transpiration and to learn about the 3 stages and processes in transpiration itself. Transpiration is the process of water moving through a plant from the roots to the leaves, and how it evaporates through pores in the leaves called stomata. There are 3 main plant organs involved in transpiration. So you've got the roots at the bottom, then you've got the stem in the middle, and then finally the leaves at the top. As well as 3 plant organs, there are 3 stages to transpiration within a plant. For each stage, you will need to know the structures involved and the processes of water moving through this stage. The first occurs in structures called root hair cells in the root organ of the plant. The second occurs in the xylem, which we've already heard about today, and it's found in the stem organ of the plant. And the final stage occurs in the stomata, which are found in the leaves of the plant. Let's go into a wee bit more detail now. Stage 1 occurs in the root organ. This is when water from the soil moves into the root hair cells through a process called osmosis. You will not have heard of the term osmosis before, but as long as you know that it's a process of water moving, then that's fine at this point. The root hair cells have a bit of a weird shape, but this specialised structure is what allows them to maximise the amount of water that they absorb from the soil. Stage 2 occurs in the stem. Water moves up the stem through the xylem vessel. This is also by the process called osmosis, so it's just water movement. And the final stage occurs in the leaf. This process is called evaporation. The water evaporates through tiny pores on the bottom of the leaf, and they are called stomata. Okay, so I'm going to show you a diagram that's just a summary of the 3 stages to transpiration. Stage 1 is when water is transported from the soil into the root hair cells with their weird structure, and that's via a process called osmosis. Stage 2 is when water is transported up the xylem via a process called osmosis. And stage 3 is when water leaves the plant out of the stomata via a process called evaporation. This table just shows a summary of the transpiration stages, their organs, their structures, and their processes. So in the root organ, the structure that you've got there is the root hair cell, and the process is osmosis, which is just water movement. In the stem organ, the structure is the xylem, and again the process is osmosis. And finally, in the leaf organ, the structure is the stomata and the process is evaporation. So water evaporates out of the stomata. Okay, so these are our learning intentions that we've learned today: to learn about the functions of the xylem and phloem, to explain the process of transpiration, and to learn about the 3 stages and processes in transpiration. Now you can go back and listen to this again if you need to. Now that we went through the PowerPoint, these are the revision tools we are advising you to use. So the revision notes can be found in the files section of the Teams. If you look at page 24, this gives you all the information you need this week about plant transport. You can also look at the BBC Bite-Size website for additional help. I've attached the link to the PowerPoint. Finally, if you type in Study Stack and in the search bar type St Ninians HS, this will come up with loads of flashcards, which are really good for revision. Click on the MC Transpiration link to get to the flashcards for the topic we've just covered. This week we have 2 assessment materials for you to complete. The first are revision questions for you to download and complete. If you can't download them, then write the answers on a sheet of paper, alright, and keep that sheet of paper for me. The second is a plant transport quiz on Teams. Once you've completed this, you must submit it so then we can see that you've completed this task. Please let us know if you're having any trouble accessing any of the documents, okay? And thank you for listening.